Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Here we are.
Yeah, bright and shiny.
Is it on? Yeah, bright and shiny is right. Is it on YouTube?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's a good start.
We're live, huh?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we got Larry, so we're in good
I'm
shape.
here. Good morning. So we are live, right? So,
Yes, we are.
Yep,
okay.
all good.
So let's see who we're expecting. Tim, Shaler, Toby. Jen. Morning, Janet.
Good morning, Jane. Good morning, everybody.
Somebody has a bird. I just heard like a little parakeet or something in the background.
Morning, this is Tim Reynolds.
Morning, Tim.
I'm just calling in because I'm in a car somewhere in West Virginia.
Oh. Well, concentrate on that driving.
Well, I'm not driving.
Oh, good.
Sweet Mary is driving.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, dear. Good morning. How are you?
Everyone's good, thanks. Hope you guys are too.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
we
It's
lose-
Jane Mitchell, and I'm driving as well.
Okay, hi, Jane.
Hello.
Hi,
Nice.
We
Jane.
can come in and out because of the mountains. How are we doing with the streaming link?
Oh, it's live.
Oh, super. That's great to hear. Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning,
Is your
Scott.
pen and paper ready? Oh, I thought you did.
That's everyone, isn't it, Larry?
No, I think let's see, we're just missing,
Shaler?
uh-huh, and,
I think just Shaler.
okay. Good. Then we can get started. If he calls, we'll add him to the call. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for getting up on this dreary Saturday morning. I guess this is good because you'll have to wait till later to go play golf or outdoor activities. What I want to do is I've sent out what I call questions for long-range planning and categorized it in each of the areas that we want to take a look at today. So I'll go through the list in the same way that the packet came to you. I'll be referring a lot, as I'm sure you will be, to this paper here called, okay.
You only knew the
Oh,
way you
great.
make me feel. You're the coolest drop of rain on a summer day. You're a story I could read on and on again. You're the sweetest
Sorry
sight
about that.
my eyes wanna drink you in. You're the dream of all dreams I wish were
Help.
real. If you only knew the way you make me
Oh,
feel.
sorry. Trying to get that thing off. Unfortunately, it's Bonnie's.
Whose is it?
So we're yet so far, conversation away.
Woo! Okay.
Wow.
I know. Here. Okay, now I can't get back to it. Okay, let's see. Wait. Okay, I apologize for that. Someone made a call through FaceTime and it came through the computer. So what I was saying, we're going to be referring to this income sheet quite a bit. For those of you on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed the music. That was from my son's wedding. So, okay, the first thing I'd like to go through is the mayor's court. In your packet, you have a narrative that was written by our police chief. And I'm going to ask him to just go over that first, and then the statistics of what we've been collecting and how it's been improving, and just give us a little background, Greg, if you can, about that.
Sure. Thank you, Larry. So if you look at, Larry, what sheet do you want me to kind of highlight? The
I
comparison
can start
sheet?
it for you. It's the one that says Village of Gates Mills Narrative of Mayor's Court.
Okay, that one. Okay.
Yeah.
So just real quick history on the mayor's court. We got started with this. Now, the mayor's court, so there's a couple different kinds. Mayor's court you may hear about a lot, I guess, publicly refers to actually holding court. That's not what we're talking about here. Ours is really considered a violations bureau. And what that means is we collect payments for fines, certain fines here at our station. We give violators the option of paying fines here directly to the village in lieu of going to court. If they don't take care of certain fines at usually it's about 10 days from violation, then those citations get sent to Lyndhurst Court, and they take it from there, and they have to appear in court. Or if a violator wants to contest a citation, or if it's a mandatory court appearance, there's a lot of variables with it. What we're talking about mainly is the run-of-the-mill citations that are issued down here. We're talking, speeding, red lights, all those. Those are the main ones that they can pay through the mayor's court.
Greg,
Certain car accidents.
Could you, when you,
I'm sorry, Larry?
also, would you go through the breakdown of how much the village gets versus the Lyndhurst Court?
Yes. So we started this back in 2016, and it was quite a bit of work getting up and running. And we really model our mayor's court after Orange Villages. There's several who have mayor's court / violations bureau in the area. But we really model ours after oranges. So in some of these comparisons that you might see, it'll indicate orange just to give you an idea of where they're at. But so typically the way it works is, say somebody's speeding on Mayfield Road, a citation's issued, they have 10 days to actually pay that citation through our mayor's court. And so in addition to the citation, they're given instructions how to go ahead and take care of that citation, what their options are. And they could do it online, they can come into the station, however they want to go ahead and resolve the case. So once the traffic stop's over with and the violator has issued their appropriate paperwork, it's out of our hands. There's nothing else we can do about it. There's no follow-ups with that anymore. They have 10 days to do it, like I said, and if they don't, we send the citation over to Lyndhurst Court and they take it from there. If the person doesn't show up in court, then they issue the appropriate warrant, and sometimes we'll pick, at that point, we'll pick them up sometime down the road. So everybody's different. If they want to set up certain payment plans, that has to be done through Lyndhurst Court. We don't do that here. It's kind of like all or nothing. We're a small staff. We don't collect anything. We don't want to have collections, things like that. So we see that a lot. People always call and they're like, I want to go ahead and take care of the citation. But I don't have the entire amount. What can I do? And they inquire about a payment plan. And well, if they do that, then all we can tell them to do is, they have to take that up to the Lyndhurst Court because they're set up to do that. So it's variable. Every person's different. So, we run into that quite a bit. But what happens is right now, so for the regular, I'll say run-of-the-mill traffic citation, an all-in cost of a citation, fine, court fees, everything, if they pay through the violations bureau, is $175. So it's a little bit lower than Lyndhurst Court. So if you make that payment through Lyndhurst Court, which they can do that after 10 days. So they could do it before if they wanted to, but typically we don't see that. So it's about, now Lyndhurst Court just raised their fines and their court fees. They just did that first of the year. So when we got started back in 2016, we were about $25 lower than Lyndhurst Court. And that's because of, we're doing it internally. We're not asking them to do it for us. Our overhead's a little bit lower. So that's how come we chose to go ahead and have it slightly less than theirs. So that was again back in 2016, and the difference then was $25. And I mentioned Lyndhurst Court recently raised their fees.
I don't want to take it up to what we're doing, what we're getting in now.
It's still the same, 175 per citation. But if you take that out, if you're looking at the grand total number, there's a comparison chart in your packet there. And you'll see in 2019, the total financial intake was about $80,000. It was $80,456. That's total. If you look at that, by comparison to 2016, where we were at 55,000. So we're seeing about $25,000 a year, between $20,000 and $25,000 a year is what we have seen by processing the payments in-house.
Okay, so in 2019, of the $80,000, what amount came to the village? All 80,000, or was part?
No,
no,
not all. Because if they choose to pay the citation or go to court, monthly we'll get a monthly check from the court. So it's a combination of the two. But what we're seeing here is about, it was about about 55,000 what we saw in 2019. I think that's what we brought in here through the mayor's court. But that's how much money we saw here. Then the other 25,000 came from the Lyndhurst Court.
Okay, so that in effect was about $55,000 more to the village than what we did before we had.
No, I think it was about 25,000 more.
25. Okay. And what do you think the cost of running that court is at this point?
Well, we have about, there's yearly maintenance fees, but it may cost about $500,000 for the court setup and the fees throughout the year. As far as the processing goes, it's really time, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. It's just the reporting afterwards that our detective sergeant will go ahead and do. We have to process everything. We have to report it to the Supreme Court. We have to report it to the BMV. That's where the time comes in, but it's very manageable. And so we believe that currently our processing fees are right where they should be. And our processing fees are $51.
Chief, this is Sandra. You said that the Lyndhurst Court costs went up in January of 2020.
Yes.
What were they and what are they now?
So it's all broken up. So if you receive a citation
Oh.
and you pay it through the Lyndhurst Court, the all-in cost is $215. That's all-in cost. But it's kind of, gets a little hazy in there. So the fine portion's really about the same, but the court costs of Lyndhurst, because they have, I would say, a bit more overhead, there's more things going on down there. So their court fees are about, I'm going to say close $95, I'd say, somewhere right in there is what they charge for processing fees. The fine amount's about the same, I would say. The processing fees are more. But when you group it all together, it's about $40 more a citation.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions for the chief about the mayor's court, or any comments about the mayor's court, or any ideas of improvements of finances or fees, etc.?
I guess this is Jim Reynolds, because the only thing that comes to my mind is Lyndhurst. I recognize for good reason our fees are lower than Lyndhurst. Given that Lyndhurst has raised theirs, is there room for us to raise ours a little bit as well?
So I'll repeat that in case you didn't hear it. But Tim was wondering that since Lyndhurst has increased their fees, is there an opportunity to increase our fees? Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's directed at me. I can't tell, but I can comment on that. I guess that's always a possibility. It's something that we can certainly discuss. And we've looked at this before, and we have not looked at it from the beginning of this year. And the reason why was because of the pandemic that we were in. I think we're a little sensitive to the needs of, what people are dealing with and whatnot. So that would be something to kind of keep an eye on. Traffic citations, not only here, but all around, I think that most people know are down considerably because we're trying to maintain that social distance and following the orders of the governor and whatnot. So, that right now, we're doing some obviously, but we're really trying to maintain and protect our officers as well as the public in the midst of the coronavirus.
Of course, thank you.
So Chief, I mean, my observation of this is it looks like the Mayor's Court program has been popular. In 2/3 of the people that got citations that were eligible to be resolved in the Mayor's Court, they took that path. And so, seems to me the only thing we could do here is try to find a way, and probably they took that path because it's cheaper to do it through us is one of the things, is to try to encourage the other 1/3. And that's kind of the betwixt and in between. If we raise our fees, people might not be encouraged to take advantage of the Mayor's Court and let it go up to Lyndhurst. And the longer they can put it off, the longer they'll put it off. I don't know how we could try to capture the other third. But is the 10-day requirement, is that statutory, Chief? Do you know?
No, we've actually gotten that to 12. So we have to get the tickets down to Lyndhurst Court. If they don't take care of it in-house, we have to get it down there within about 5 days for them to prepare the citations for court. So that's part of the reason why they have to go down at a certain time. So we actually stretched it from 10 to 12. And, so we do see, there's a little help in there, but we don't know exactly how much. It just depends. I mean, sometimes people pay right away. Other people, pay after 1 week. Other people pay at 12. It's so variable.
Yeah. That's the only, my only thought is that if we could extend the time, we might capture a little bit more of that third, but that's right.
That's a
Greg-
good thought though, Scott.
Greg, do we
Yes,
do we give them a little sheet? I know
We do.
of that you can pay it conveniently, because if you take it and you send it to the court, you have to, it's, a date and all this where it's convenience for the violation payment. I thought we did a little sheet
Yes, we
promoting
do.
that or something.
We do. We give them the information. So when a citation is issued, there's two things they receive. The violator receive the physical copy of the citation, traffic citation, and an instruction sheet. Here are your options to go ahead and resolve this. And if they have any questions, certainly they can call us here at the town hall and we can guide them from there.
Do
Now,
we
looking at
say
what-
on anywhere on there that the value of paying it is less than Lyndhurst Court or comparison or something?
Yeah, that's something, again, that's something that we really stick to the basics on that. We give them the instructions. We feel like we don't want to put our officers in a situation where we give any advice. So, it's pretty clear on the instruction sheet on how to, what their options are and how to go about, taking care of this however they choose to. The one thing I failed to mention that I thought would be important. So if they do choose to pay the citation online, there is a processing fee online to do that. We don't get any of that. That's a third-party vendor, and I want to say, Janet, may know the exact amount. I'm going to say it's maybe $6 or $7 on top of the citation to go ahead and take care of, sort of a convenience fee.
Greg, I'm going to ask that if you would, to send a copy of the slip that you give to the violator.
Yes.
So that we can all take a look at that. And I think Scott had a great idea of maybe extending the time so that possibly it gives people a little more time to think about what they want to do. And maybe we need to revise that sheet, Mayor, to tell them the advantage to them. The officer doesn't have to say it, but it seems like we want to encourage that. And I think Scott has a good idea. If we can get some of those, the third that aren't using the service to use it, that would be additional income.
Because Chief, what's the delta? So if we do the ticket, do we get all the money? And if it goes up to Lyndhurst, so if we get, let's say we get $175 when we do the ticket, if it goes up to Lyndhurst, how much do they keep? Do we get 125 or do we know?
So so that in that $175, there's a lot of things that come out of there. So there's a $51 processing fee. So you deduct that, obviously that comes from the 175, and then you have the actual fine amount, which is $80. So that gives you 131. So the remaining $44 gets distributed to the state, different crime funds and domestic violence. So there's all those things. So every citation issued, we already, I don't want to say the word lose because it's just how it is. Not just with us, with everybody. $44 is immediately comes out of every citation, and that goes into DUI funds, things like that, special programs.
Yeah, it goes to the state, it goes to the county, and it goes to the court. We have 3 places we send checks to every month out of the Violations Bureau.
So
I guess the question is, if we process it, how much do we net? And if Lyndhurst
$130.
processes it, how much do we net? So how much more do we net by processing on a per ticket basis?
Well, we get $51 more than we would get from the court. Is that correct, Greg?
It's actually 71, it's 51, and our fines are $20 higher than Lyndhurst Court. So we
Okay.
receive $71 more in total if the citation is waived through our mayor's court.
okay,
And keep in mind, there's certain violations that we cannot hear. We don't have a mayor's court. We don't have a magistrate. I'm talking like driving under suspension offenses, DUI citations, injury accidents.
Right.
If they have more than 3 violations in 1 year, that requires a mandatory court appearance. So, there's a lot of variables with that. So what happens is when an officer's out there on a traffic stop, they have to look at the driving record and see, in fact, if this person has to go to court. If this person has to go to court,
Yeah.
he or she does not even receive the instruction sheet.
Right.
But, we send it right to court. So, you got to keep an eye on that as well.
And so if I just do a little quick math on the $71 difference, times the 221 citations. So what we're talking about there is $15,691. That's the difference. That's how much less we get for Lyndhurst processing that third versus us doing it, is about what I think. So
Jerry Bonham.
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
If there's not any more discussion on that, I think we'll go to our next subject. But I'm going to ask Greg again to send everyone a copy of the sheet that's given out. I would also like him to put in there the breakdown of the fee so that we can look at that clearly to see what's coming to the village. Next, we'll look at Ancora, and I think Tim is the one that could best talk about that. But you can see that that was started in 2018 May, and the first year we had an income increase of 36,000 from Ancora, and last year 137,000. And maybe Tim can just give us a projection of what he feels will happen in the coming year.
Okay, sure. Let me, the Ancora investment account, like the mayor's court, both came out of the 2016 long-range plan and financial planning effort. It took us until 2018 because we did an RFP to find a right investment advisor. Those of you on council may remember that we had picked one, and then that one decided that they'd rather run the state program, and ours would be a conflict, so we had to go back and select another investment advisor. But ultimately, we got to Ancora. That account is where we keep our reserves that are not required for day-to-day operations. And it holds a little more than $4 million in it. The investment policy of that is to invest that money in AA and above rated fixed income securities. And that can include corporate bonds, U.S. government agency bonds, treasury bills, that sort of thing. So the objective, of course, is preservation of capital first, but then within that objective, the best interest rates we can find. Now that we're up to speed and fully invested, it all is subject to interest rates, but at current interest rate levels, which are quite low, we expect to earn about $100,000 a year on that money to the extent that we can maintain those reserves. As our reserves drop, of course, the income on that account will drop as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Tim on the Ancora account? Any concerns? I would like to just comment that, that's been a really great boost to village income. Because we were previously invested, I believe, was it the state fund, Janet, at a very low interest rate?
Yeah, we were invested in Star Ohio and Star Plus, both through the state treasury.
Right, and so this has been a big increase. If there are not any questions about that, or any comments or any suggestions for Tim, then we'll go to the cell tower. Okay, so the cell tower, that's located over on Carpenter Road. And you can see that various companies, Verizon, AT&T, Nextel, and T-Mobile have been contributing to use that cell tower. I guess AT&T, Janet, is no longer part of that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And my question would be, are there any opportunities for additional companies to be added onto this? I don't know if anyone has any information concerning that.
It's actually something we are working on. And Chip is heading that up with me.
Good.
And we are working to add to that and actually try to find another location for a tower. You need more big tower. In order to have the little towers, there's a whole learning curve with these things, which these small cell towers that everybody was talking about. And there was a lot of mayors and managers organization did a lot of work on with small cell towers, and we were very upset in a historic area. You need more small cell towers to transfer to the big towers as the need for more information moving it around is coming online. So as time goes on, unless the technology changes, which I'm sure it will, but it hasn't yet, you're going to see more small cell towers feeding the big towers. Anyway, it's something we're working on.
So Karen, is our tower a small tower or a big tower?
No, that is a big tower. The small towers are what, if I remember it correctly, they are between 50 and 75 feet along in the roads, in the right of way. And they can be, they're probably in the range. Some of them look like a street light and they're on top of it. Some of them look like a telephone pole along the street, but it's an added tower in the right of way in most cases. Sometimes they'll put it on something that exists.
How
but
many small towers do we?
We don't have any at the moment. We're not on their radar right now. They're doing it in the major, bigger city areas where they can get more for, you know, there's more people to service and sign up. I don't know where they are in Ohio. I know Richmond Heights has had some of them put in. But I can't, I don't, it kind of got dropped last year when they ended up, the FCC or whatever it is, ended up overriding what was being done in Ohio. They just said nothing doing, and that kind of killed it. So, and they haven't really brought it back up again. So I don't know. They're going forward, but I don't exactly know where at the moment. I do know there's some in Richmond Heights. So they're around us, but I don't know the specifics. They haven't come to us, let's put it that way.
I think some of this will get impacted. I think some of this will get impacted by the implementation of 5G wireless. But my question, Karen, we're investigating, looking for another site for a large tower.
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
And that will improve. That'll improve cell coverage generally in the valley.
Correct. There's a definite need for one, and one was going to go into Gilmore, and then that fell apart actually for non-factual information, but it did fall apart, and that's that. So then we picked it up to try to find a new location.
Yeah, and if we own the tower, then the revenue we get is that we are leasing space on that tower to cell phone companies like Verizon and you know.
Exactly. And we have had people, companies that want to buy our tower and, you know, if we need cash, in fact, I had a call not too long ago. If we need cash, we'll buy your tower. You know, it's a good investment for a long-term profit or income. So we're not interested in selling. I'd like to get another one.
Karen, I'm sorry, this is Mary. What is the status of the tower site we were considering?
We're working
up at
on
the-
it, Mary.
Okay, good. Good, lovely, thank you.
So I think one of the wonderful things is I keep hearing comments about poor cell service in the village. So I think that would be exciting if we could improve it with another cell tower.
Absolutely. We are trying.
You alluded to some unbased concerns for the Gilmore Tower. And I know
Yes.
that some people worry about things radiating from the tower.
This had nothing to do with radiating, and I think they've disproved that. I mean, as an example, Hunting Valley has 2 different sites. They have 3 towers at the one site off of 87, and at their town hall site, they have, I think it's 2 towers. So, you know, it's a good thing for income.
Yeah.
And it would help the whole area. One of our drawbacks is the hills and the trees, which is why we get such poor service, but.
Mhm. Hey, Mayor Snyder, do you know, does the village have any expenses or costs related to the towers, you know, like maintenance or?
Pretty much it falls on the carriers.
Okay, so it's there.
So it's,
Right.
yeah, it is a relatively good investment. I mean, once you get it up, then you start bringing in the income with it. And we're working with a company, and he's actually outselling position on the tower. So it's kind of a contract thing at the moment, which I can't get into. So that's about as much as I can say. But we do have somebody out there soliciting to say Sprint or whatever the name is at the moment.
I can tell you too that, you know, we get, the check that we get for the rent just comes from Verizon. They send in for everybody. And then I bill Verizon for the property tax on the property, and then they reimburse us.
Okay, gotcha. And then just kind of to follow up with that, if we were to put in another tower, another few towers, would we pay for those towers to, you know, or okay.
Actually, Tobias, there's a couple ways of doing that. We could pay and put the money out, and takes, I think I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Tim might remember, I don't remember, 3, 4, 5 years to get your money back. And then it's a positive cash flow thereafter. So it's a good thing. But you can do it a couple different ways. You can do it a couple different ways, cost-wise, or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, your choices are you own the property, you could lease the property to whoever wants to build the tower. Get just the property itself be considerably less return. The return, you do get your money back if you build the tower, if you put the money up to build the tower, and you are successful in getting wireless companies to mount up the tower. The return is well within 3 years. So you get your money.
And the only reason that hasn't gone forward sooner is we were waiting for the or the combination of Sprint and I forget what it even was now. Yeah, to be okayed. And so now that that's going forward, we're going to them to be on the tower, along with Verizon. And
Karen, do you have an approximate cost of how much a tower costs if we were to build our own tower?
I not really at the moment.
Okay.
Kind of waiting to see how that comes back. I can tell you that when Gilmore was doing it, I believe that they figured their tower would be between 250 and 275. But I've also heard less than that. So I really don't know. I would say between 150 and 300,000. Part of it depends on the location and if it has to be 90 feet or it's 180 feet tall. So
Seems like the cell tower is a very advantageous thing that we have.
it is.
It'd be great to get more.
And if you go and look at the ones that are in Hunting Valley and start watching for them around where they're setting and whatnot, they really are, everybody was freaked out about them to begin with. But if they do it right and select it and you pick the right fence and the whole, because they have to put a little building and whatnot, I think it can blend in very well.
Any other questions or comments on cell towers, or any ideas or thoughts about improvement of finances from cell towers?
Our biggest problem is going to be small cell towers going forward. And I don't know what that means, because we won't be getting money out of those is what my understanding is, but they're going to be invasive in the right-of-ways on our streets.
We had considered, I know, before things kind of came to a screeching halt, I know Gates Mills and a number of communities were considering legislation that would give us some ability to control them.
That's kind of what was happening on a statewide level, but the FCC superseded it.
Yeah.
So the next thing to consider on the list was village cable service. And there was a letter from Todd Hunt, our counsel for Gates Mills, concerning the requirements or the restrictions on cable service that were imposed by the state of Ohio. Janet, can you comment on the village cable service, like who we're getting income from that, and are these just cable companies like Verizon?
No, we get it from Charter Communications and from Ohio Bell.
Is there still an Ohio Bell?
That's what the checks say.
Oh, surprised. And what are they paying for when their cable service? Is it the right to run the cable through the village, or what?
I don't know the answer to that, Larry.
I don't either. Does anybody?
Well, I think it used to be that the local municipalities had to grant a franchise to allow them to provide service within their boundaries, and they used to pay a franchise fee, and I think they still pay something like that. I mean, as I'm looking at Todd's email here, I think the 2007 legislation might have watered that down a little bit, but I still think we have a franchise agreement with at least it seems to say here with Spectrum. I don't know whether we get one from AT&T / Ohio Bell or not, but I mean, my cable service is AT&T, so I'm expecting that we do.
Yeah, I think AT&T must be the Ohio Bell, and Spectrum is probably through the Charter Communications.
Right, which used to be Time Warner. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's basically grants both of them in their respective areas, essentially a monopoly. We don't have the ability to choose between cable providers. In fact, nobody does. And the thinking is that the expense of cable is all in what they call the last mile, which is to run that cable off the phone into the home. And the big controversy around cable is whether or not it should be regulated like a utility, and that cable should be a common carrier. And if it were, then you would be able to have competition amongst cable companies, which clearly would be in the consumer's interest. But at this point, it's not possible. So I think the franchise fee and then essentially is to grant a monopoly right of way to those respective entities within defined boundaries.
And obviously this revenue is always variable because it depends. I mean, I don't think we get a fixed fee, we get a percentage. And as people cut the cord, it would probably reduce the revenue. But by the same token, if people are going to be working at home, they're probably going to want to get more dependable service. It's hard to tell, but would our fee be a variable fee based on whatever the revenue is? Does anyone know that?
I mean, I have the breakdowns that come with the checks, but I wasn't prepared for that today, so.
Do you happen to recall, Janet, if
I think we just lost them. So while we're waiting for Tim to come back, Karen, do you know like who negotiates with the cable services, or if there are any opportunities to add different ones? Because we're seeing like WOW and different companies.
I don't know. I way back when Dave Burke did it, but or Gary did it, and I was just trying to find the email to forward to you, Larry. I got something from a cable company. I sent it to Dave. I don't know if he called them because I had no idea about it. Another cable that either wants to run or is running through part of the village. So we probably should, I'll find it, but we should probably pursue that. I do not know.
Tim, are you back now? Yeah, I think we lost Tim.
No, I'm here. I'm still here.
I thought we cut it. You cut off for a minute there. So
Because we're in the mountains.
yeah, yeah. So we were talking about whether or not there were opportunities for other companies. I know like my kids use WOW, and there are other companies that are running cable. If there's other, who's the person that negotiates with these companies, and is there an opportunity to go out and look for other companies that might be coming into the village?
I can tell you with Charter Communications, it's a 5% of their fee base. That's what the last one was, the last check I got from them was. That amount that we got was $10,889.53, and that's for the period of January 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2020.
Oh, do we get that quarterly, or is that just a one-time? Is that what we can expect quarterly, Janet?
I'll have to look, Mary.
Okay.
I think, hey, so Larry, I think that it is worth investigating what opportunities there are for either adding additional cable service, if that's possible. And I suspect it. I don't know what the agreements are with our current cable providers, but it may well be that those agreements have a termination date and give us an ability to negotiate as well. But I certainly think that that's an item for your committee to put on its investigating list.
Okay, yeah, definitely will do that. Anything else about village cable service before we go to water hookup revenue? So as you know, many people in the village have had wells in the past, water wells, and then city water became available, and many people hooked into the city water, village water. However, apparently there are individuals that have not yet taken advantage of the opportunity to have city water. And this is a definite opportunity for the village because for the hookup, there's a fee of $16,500. One of the questions I would have is how do we find those people that have not hooked up to the water supply and give them reasons to, and are there enticements that we could offer for villagers to add to the water, add water to their homes?
I can answer a little bit on it. I think, Janet, we have a list of who's tapped into water. Can that list, we don't?
No.
Is that a list we could get from the water department?
I mean, we can ask.
If we can get a list by that, I was going to say we could maybe get it sorted by street and then take a look at it and maybe send a note or send a letter to those that haven't with offering it. When we get the request, it's usually when, you know, when this was voted on, there were the people that wanted water and the people that didn't want water because they didn't want to spend the money to hook up. Their well was fine. But as the houses change hands, people that move here, then they want water. So then they contact us, well, how do we go forward and hook up and whatnot? Well, now that everything's done and paid off and whatnot, we revisited it. And so going forward, we could offer that to the people in the areas that haven't hooked up.
Although there are some that put it on their assessment when they, at the beginning, you know, to tap in and to pay for the water main, but some of them still have not tapped in even though they paid the fee to tap in.
Right.
Yeah, that we're an example of that. And I think, Karen, when we talked about this at one of the village council meetings, I think there was an estimated maybe 20 family, 20 households that may not be hooked
I only
in.
know of two.
Pardon?
I know of two, but that's two houses, but
Yeah, I know the number about 20 was discussed.
Well, those could be the ones that put it on the tax duplicate. I think we have some ones out there that they paid it, but they didn't hook in.
Right.
You know what I'm trying to say? And anyway, all we can do is try. We'll have to figure out how to get that list or create it somehow.
And I'm not sure you have this information available offhand, but we've had some new homes built in the village. Have they been paying the fee for water hookup, and how much have we received from that?
Janet,
I haven't had anything come through here.
That might be a question.
Interesting.
Dave Biggert, you know, if the new homes are hooking into water, like, and Janet hasn't gotten any income, like, why not?
I get the permit fees, but that's, you know, I don't think tap-in fees included in that.
well, we'll have to address it.
Yeah.
So, for example, on the Tink Beal property where we had one home, two homes built, my guess would be that property already had tapped in, and so the village wouldn't get an additional fee.
Right.
Just because, you know.
Right.
But we've had new hook. Yeah, that would be the same thing with the Cole property. That was a house torn down, rebuilt. But the new houses that are going up on Brigham and whatnot, we should look into that. Although Dave is very aware of this and he goes for inspection and whatnot. So that's where we have to ask the question is to Dave, how do you handle that?
So we'll definitely look at that and review that for our follow-up meeting. Any other thoughts on water hookup? That takes us to village property. Karen was kind enough for Janet to provide us there's a list of all the properties that the village owns. And in my thoughts, I had indicated that we own several properties, and some of which we receive rental income from. Some of the rental income already have contracts that will come up for review, and the real estate committee will make sure that those are at market value and rate. There's a lot of additional properties in the village, some of which are very small, some of which are sizable, some of which are conserved and can't be developed, but some that aren't. And my thought was that possibly that some of that property would be available for sale or rental or development, either by the village or with someone with a development idea. I'm wondering if anyone had some thoughts about that.
I think my only thought about the sales component of it is that it's a quick fix for a cash flow problem, but you know, holding on to a property is maybe a longer term. We should have a longer term mentality than just a quick sale, which helps our cash flow, you know, for that year or for 2 years. But then we're still in the same boat as far as running at a deficit. So I don't think that I think I'd look very, very carefully at just a quick fire sale of properties, because once sold, you know, you've lost that asset.
Mm-hmm.
The only advantage, I don't disagree with I never disagree with
Careful now, Tim. She might let you off by the side of the road.
That's right. But the only thing I would say is to the extent that you've got a property that the village is owning and it is not being used.
Yeah.
If you sell it to somebody who builds a house on it or does something else with it, then the village benefits from property taxes,
right,
which it doesn't currently. So that would be one thing to think about. But you know, that's also within that's really in many ways a master plan question. What kinds of things? How do we want village property to be utilized? It is something to consider. And Larry, I would think that it would be useful if your committee identified properties that had the potential for use, that were able to be used and had the potential, so that we have a good understanding of what's there.
I think, Tim, this is Sandra. I think that's an excellent point. And Larry, this description and listing is helpful. Maybe the map might be very helpful too.
Honestly, looking at this list, I don't know what we're using the properties between Riverview and River for, but most of these I'm looking at, I mean, we sort of need them, but and a lot of them are small enough that they could only really have any value to the adjoining landowners, because none of these are really buildable. That
where are you? Where on the list? I don't have the list in front of me. Riverview. What did you say?
They're very small pieces of property between Riverview and River. Where it's like less, like 2/10 of an acre or 3/4.
Is this along River Road?
So it looks like it's between River and Riverview, and my guess is these are that area was plotted at one time. I'm looking at a map on my wall right now of it for. I mean, it must have been for 60 lots in there, 50 lots, and these must be a bunch of those small little pieces the village picked up along the way. I don't really know whose properties they adjoin, but
this is off of Riverview. There's a couple of lots that were given to us, and actually they're not big enough to build, but somebody is building on one that has, I think it's 2 lots, it might be 1, that's going to be building a new house next to it. Now, there might be something where you could take that little piece and approach each neighbor, because we did this on Riverview with something else, actually a piece of conservancy land, and split it, and half could go to one neighbor and half could go to the other, because it's a non-buildable lot. It's really kind of a protected piece on the river, if you will.
Right.
That's a possibility.
And it seems there were several pieces like that. So it might be as Scott said, it might be a good idea to offer those to the homeowner that's adjacent to it and see if they wanted to buy that piece of property. Because I don't think the village is going to receive any benefit from like a 2/10 of an acre piece of land.
In those couple that you're referring to, that would be beneficial, because there really is no other use there for it.
Larry, let me ask you a devil's advocate question. I mean, what incentive does a homeowner have to even buy 2/10 of an acre alongside him if nothing's going to happen to it anyway?
They would have the
It would
ability,
increase their taxes.
taxes, but they'd have the ability to use that land. Let's say they wanted to have a garden adjacent to their house.
Okay. Okay.
So I would
I
think
think it's property value. Janet
Okay.
hit it. It's property value to the owner, which is taxable
Okay.
to us, but there's value in
Right.
owning property where your house
Okay.
is. Let's.
But if your taxes are going to go up, I'm just saying maybe that's a disincentive, since nothing's going to happen on that property anyway. My taxes being increased would be a disincentive for me to buy it.
But you may want to use it for something.
Okay. So yeah, no, I definitely think it's worth asking these adjoining property owners whether they'd be interested in purchasing it. But I think it would be really nice to package it and market it well so that we have some success in selling those pieces.
sure.
In some way, the tax that's on those, if you go look at the size and whatnot, it's not going to be that much, really,
Okay. Yeah,
in the
you're
big
right.
picture.
Okay. Yeah.
And if the village owns it now, Karen, we don't pay tax on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All right, just trying to think out of the box here.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a
Yeah,
good
so-
idea.
Yeah.
Village-owned properties, school properties, the church properties, the land conserved properties, none of those pay taxes.
And the metro parks.
And the metro parks.
What can
Wow.
yeah, do I dare bring up
Go ahead.
very sensitive, probably a very sensitive topic here? I'll go ahead and put my foot in it. But what about the police chief's house? That property that the village owns. On the sheet here, it says that the market value is $274,400.
That's true. We've always had a house to put our police chief in, because we feel that, or we've always felt since I've been on council, that
Hi, Karen.
by living in it. And we used to have, it used to be a requirement, but we had to take that requirement off the books. But it's a very good incentive, especially when we're looking for a chief, which we're not.
Yeah.
Right. Karen, do we pay real estate taxes, or Janet, do we pay real estate taxes? Does the village pay real estate taxes on that house? The chief's house?
Yes,
Okay, interesting.
because it's, yeah. I mean, the Mills building has taxes. The wash house has taxes.
If income is derived from it, then you pay taxes on it.
Okay, so
And so we,
Chief, I'm not trying to kick you out of your house, and I don't want all of a
Oh,
sudden
no.
speeding tickets,
No,
but
just,
just for
I could-
discussion.
I can kind of tell you how that, I mean, I don't think you guys, it's not a free house. I mean, that's, there's rental involved. But, yeah, that was something that, like when, with the previous mayor, Sean Riley, we had discussed, and I think like current mayor Karen said, that it was just something that, I mean, there's advantages to it.
Okay.
Personnel advantages and things like that. And it's always been, well, I think it was built in what, Janet, 74, I think, for Chief Hughes back then, if I'm not mistaken. And then, you know, it's just been used for that
And
over
it's,
time.
the chiefs have always lived in the village, with the exception of 2 of them. And one signed a contract that he would move to the village, and he did not do it. So
Oh.
it's kind of a, and the one was so close that isn't in the village, wasn't living in the village, but he really was adjacent to the village. I don't know how to say that. Anyway,
Okay.
I think we've always liked having him be a resident of the
On
village.
site. Okay, so we've raised this issue and decided that it's not something that we wanna change at this point.
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I
Good.
agree. I agree. Janet, who owns the parking lot below the elementary school, right there on River Road?
The school.
Are we sure? I know they own the property for the building, but I'm not so sure the school owns that lower parking lot.
Well, I believe they do, because it was looked into when they had to redo their septic system. I don't know. I couldn't tell you when that was, but maybe Tom does. I don't remember, but I know. And it's kind of in that lower lot to the left corner there as you're going in. That's all I remember. I'm pretty sure they do, though.
Okay. I'd like to get to, if anyone, do you have something else, Mary, you wanted to add?
No,
I was
thank
just
you.
going to add that I do believe they own the lower lot, because when I was on PTO, we were trying to get it paved years ago. And I do think it's owned by the school.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It was them that we had to go to to try to get it paved, not the village. Yeah.
Thanks, Susan. So now we're going to enter a sticky area, the sewer. The sewer charges for the downtown area. So I'm not sure everyone's aware of the fact that there is a water treatment plant that serves the downtown area of the village. And we have an inspection that's mandated by the county. And I believe that they're there every day. Is that correct, Janet?
Yes.
So they're there every day. And it cost us approximately $210,000 per year in inspection fees. Only part of that
I'm outraged.
only part of that is reimbursed. And my question to this committee is, are there any ideas in which we can reduce the cost or the frequency, or something we can do to avoid over a $200,000 per year charge on sewer inspection?
Well, who's doing the inspection? The county people?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
Water Department, Division of Water.
I mean, are there any private contractors that are
It's titled to county.
Yeah, are there any private contractors that are acceptable to the county that would do it for less? I guess that's the big question.
I have no idea.
Do we, doesn't the Hunt Club have its own wastewater treatment system? And does that have to be reviewed by the county as well? I just wonder if talking with them about what their expenses are, I guess is one idea. And secondly, I know as we've talked about new housing in the village, there's been some talk about different kinds of septic systems. I don't know if those would also be required to be, reviewed by the county, but it seems like it's worth some investigation. It's such a huge expense, and we've been
Well, the
burdened
health
for
department
years.
will look at your septic system.
I mean, I'm sorry, but systems for developments that I don't know if it requires wastewater treatment and a review by the county.
Well,
I don't know.
Well,
I think it's worth investigating.
Uh, Excuse me, Larry, just so you know, Mr. Steele joined my phone. He just joined the meeting.
Shay, thank you for joining.
Who did?
Shaler.
Tim?
I'm here. I don't know if anybody can hear me.
No, Shaler
Yeah.
Steele, Karen.
Oh,
Shay, yeah, Tim was here before.
where is he?
I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay, so we have
You're
two
looking
people
for-
by phone here.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start with the sewer thing. I don't know, is that something that Dave Bigger could weigh in on and tell us what options are, or maybe Chris Courtney or somebody?
I would say both Dave and Chris would be a good one to maybe you could have a little meeting with them and ask the questions about different inspectors and whatnot. That'd be a good starting point.
And I guess the question is who's physically doing the inspection? Is it the county? I mean, is it someone the county's contracted with?
No,
It's
it's
the
the
county.
county.
So it's actually county employees that are doing it.
Yes.
Right.
So
You see their white truck with the county insignia on it every day. They
Every day.
inspect on my street, the pump station, every day.
So I'm wondering if we couldn't, I mean, doesn't sound like there's a outside contractor opportunity there, because maybe
Yeah, I don't
what are
know.
those guys for the county going to do for jobs then if they're not doing it? But might be worth a look. I mean,
You know, like the pump station on our street, that was redone a couple years ago. We had money in it, but I think most of the money came from the county. Janet, do you know that answer to that question? We redid the pump station on Chartley. We redid the pump station on Hill Creek. That's by Kennedy's. Isn't that by Kennedy's, Greg?
It is, yes. It's
Okay,
right,
so those two,
yes, right on Andrews Lane, in fact, right at the
right,
end.
those two were redone. The cost for the pump station on River Road and Mayfield, that all fell on the village. Because that was something we had to put in order to, the town hall, community house, service garage, fire department, Tom would know this, all failed. And so we were forced to put in a wastewater treatment plant. And we chose that area. We traded land, as a matter of fact, to get that spot. And we couldn't, until we did that, we weren't allowed to go ahead with the development and redo of the library and Mills building across the street. It all kind of happened in the same time frame. But it actually started because all the village buildings and post office, which we own that building, failed
EPA.
EPA tests. There you go, EPA. Keyword, EPA, we failed. And so the EPA said to us, you must have a wastewater treatment plant,
I
period.
think they were threatening daily fines because they said it was
Correct.
raw sewage going into the river.
Right, yes, that's right. Scott, your mother was mayor at that time, and we had to learn a hell of a lot about sewage that I never thought we'd know in our entire lives. A lot of speakers and oh my God. But anyway, we had to build it for the village buildings in order to go forward across the street by the EPA. And that's it. So that's where the big cost came from.
What about the possibility as, contracts are renewed with renters on village property, that some of these fees would be taken into account in terms of renegotiating some of those contracts?
I mean,
very little of it is being picked up by those that are renting.
I don't know what was considered when the original contracts for the Mills building and whatnot were done. Jerry Tone, when he was on council, kind of handled that whole end of it. And we'll have to look at it. I don't know if
I mean, it
anything
may
is
not be a-
listed.
Yeah. It may not be a great deal, but it's just something to take a look at.
While Janet's getting that, I think it seems like we need to find out like who is making this requirement that it has to be checked daily. Like, is that an EPA?
The only one that we would probably maybe be able to contract separately, although if we ever want that plant to be just taken over by the county, there's something there that with the inspection, I don't know the details of it, but I just know that there's something in that idea. Because Dave and Chris have both talked about it.
The ones that I bill for their sewer, we have an ordinance 2002-15, and that I have to, for a quarterly charge, each property connected to the system, I have to charge a minimum of $50 for the quarter or $6.50 feet of metered flow. So for the church, I get their bills quarterly. They bring them to me, and then I compute what the amount is that they owe. And the wash house, they reimburse us the water bill and their sewer. But these are both very small amounts. They don't use a lot of the system. Sarah's does in their rent. There's $813 a month that goes towards the wastewater plant. And then the village is obviously the biggest user.
Does that ever go up? I'm just curious in those. Is there any like, you add 2% every year or when the contract's renewed or anything like that?
No, that's just what our ordinance has in it.
So it's been the same amount forever?
2002.
So that is something, maybe we can look at. I don't know. That's how I'd look at it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, I think this is an area we really should be investigating. I think we need to find out where this requirement for daily inspection comes, possibly renegotiate the contract.
I'm sure it's from the health department or the EPA.
Well, possibly we could renegotiate the cost with the county. I think we need to at least try.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and the thing that Karen just brought up, I wasn't aware of, and I think is worth investigating is what would happen to our costs if we simply turned that pump station over to the county and said it's yours now. And is that possible?
Yeah.
I think it's worth understanding that relationship.
I think it requires a meeting with Chris and Dave. Chris would have a better feel for this than anybody. And ask the questions.
Are the pump stations in other villages like Chagrin, or I'm thinking Russell or Moreland Hills, all of those communities that run along the Chagrin River, they've got to have maybe have pump stations. Who owns them? Does the county or do those individual municipalities? And what are their, and are they getting inspected on a daily basis? And what are their fees?
Chagrin Falls would be a good one to contact.
Yeah, I think we're getting fleeced by the county when I hear the size of that daily inspection. And for all we know, the guy is out having a Snickers bar in the car. Well, I mean, I don't know if it has to really be inspected daily, is what Larry's point is. So, we'd be the first one to call them and tell them if something wasn't right. But I'm kind of falling into Larry's camp about this. Sounds like a great day job for a county worker, but we're paying the bill.
I think Chris and Dave Biggert are the first stop, and then finding out what other communities have to deal with too. But I think understanding our options there is really what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
we'll definitely do that. There are a couple other items I'd like to get through before we end today, and I promise Chief Robinson we would end so that he has time to prepare for his next meeting.
Yeah, we have another one.
I know Jane's part of that, so she probably wants to get a cup of coffee before that next meeting. But the next thing I want to talk about is the alarm system. We have a wonderful benefit to the villagers, but it's free, and that's free monitoring of their alarm system. It's costing the village about $30,000 a year. I think some people are actually, we're paying for it and they're not even using the service. We're the only community I know of that offers this. And I'm wondering what you all feel about continuing that.
Larry, this is Greg here. I could just quickly jump in because, you know, I know a little bit about this here. So you're right. It's about 30,000, about 29, 30. And then now we're starting to purge some. It's taken some time, and it's still ongoing to some degree. But we are purging some of the alarms. The residents who are not using the alarms. It's been a tedious process. The challenge becomes we do not know over time whether or not these newer residents are using the alarms, that type of thing. You know, there's when there's a transaction, a new resident comes in, you know, we don't know at that point if they're going to continue with that alarm. You know, if they're going to go to a different alarm company, things of that nature. But I think we went ahead and ended up purging about, I think there were 30 homes here recently, Janet, or I can't remember the exact number. So that should come down a little bit here. But again, we don't know all of them because we have about 280 homes, I believe, who are showing contracts with American Security. So I want to be clear on that. In order to get the free alarm monitoring service, they must contract with American Security. And what we're finding is a lot of homes down here, Gilmore Security Residential. So we're specifically talking about American Security. So the bill will be coming down, but in my personal experience, what I found is talking to residents about the service or whatnot. If it's a free service, even people who don't use it that often really have no motivation to, they're sitting there saying, well, I'm not paying for it. So, I'm going to tell them I'm using the alarm, although I'm really not. So, that becomes a little tricky there. So, but that's kind of where it sits right now.
So I want to just ask a question here, because I find this sort of appalling, not our side, but the way we pay this charge, American Security bills us, is that correct?
Yes.
And we pay an invoice. So American Security is including in their bill people who are no longer using their service.
Correct.
And I think, frankly, I think probably somebody ought to have a conversation with American Security. Say, hey,
we have a couple times.
Yeah.
The problem is, Tim, that the people moving into these homes may not even, I think that when people move out, because they don't pay a bill monthly and they don't see a bill, they don't think about it. So they don't cancel it. So then the new person moves in and they see the system there and they either don't think about it or they think that they're not using it. And and then American
Security.
Security.
Well, no, hang on. American Security is going to be
someone's
billing
moved.
them too. American Security is going to be billing the resident as well.
No.
For the service.
No.
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 No. No.
No.
No.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're gonna look into this. This is
That's why we've had Greg calling some of these people to see if they're using it or not, and if we can take them off of that, because a lot of them may be using another system and not even using American Security. So Greg's making phone calls, but those phone calls are they're nice long public relations visits, aren't they, Greg?
They are. I mean, they really have been.
I think the alarm system started out one way, and I think it's gotten convoluted over time. It's unfortunate, but I think at some point in time, we may want to, the people that are on it and using it at the end with Greg, I think maybe they be grandfathered until such time they change their house or they move out, and then we no longer pay for it, so that eventually it goes away.
It just goes away.
Exactly.
Karen, do you think it would be a terrible, we'd have terrible backlash, pushback if we just canceled that security option for our residents completely?
Well, yeah, yes and no. It wouldn't affect some people. They're not, I think they would get it. But you do have some longtime residents that are using it that they'd be very upset. So that's why I would say that a way to do it would be to let it phase itself out. But unfortunately, until that happens, it requires work on our end, like the chief's doing with the phone calls to find out, okay, so-and-so moved, the service is no longer there, or, tell American Security to start charging them.
I agree.
I was just thinking in terms.
No, I was just going to say I agree with Karen. I think it is a great service that we've offered, but we can't manage it and
right. That's the problem. It's got convoluted. You got people that have it and they're not using it. They don't even know about it because it's changed. It's a problem, and I know we have a fire chief that likes those systems.
Yeah. If I could weigh in just for a second, Tim, this is Tom. Just a little history on how we got here. The reason that we're right now paying for these systems, the monitoring, before we had closed our dispatch center, when we made that transition and went with Chagrin Valley Dispatch, we closed our dispatch center and our jail. The dispatch center monitored alarms for people at no cost, both police, burglar alarms and fire alarms. And when we decided to close our dispatch center and regionalize, I was greatly concerned that a number of people in the village who had been monitored at no cost would simply say, well, I don't want my home monitored anymore. So we saw a great savings by closing our dispatch center and consolidating. And we said, well, we can absorb some of these costs. One of the greatest concerns I have, of course, is with the fire alarms and someone that decides that I don't want to have my house monitored anymore. And that means if a fire does start in that home and no one's there to report it, by the time that we get notified, that fire is much more dangerous for our firefighters trying to put it out because it's a much larger fire. So we got here because we were doing it since the beginning at no cost to the residents. And through the years, it has become somewhat of a problem with trying to really know who is using the system and who isn't, and who we're possibly being billed for that we shouldn't be. And that's one of the reasons that Greg had been calling around and just trying to talk with the residents and say, are you aware that your house is monitored? Or did you actually hire a new company to do it? Or have you gone with self-monitoring, which has become very popular? So that's just a little brief history of why the village is actually footing the bill, if you will, for those residents.
I could just.
I was just going to say, do we know how many out of our, say, 975 residents are actually monitored by someone?
I do know there's about 280 with American Security, and I don't have the exact number on the others, but I think it's going to be in the range of, around 200. I think we have about 500 homes down here that are, are monitored. I think I heard that number, but I cannot confirm that. Karen, I would agree with you. If we do tweak the service, I think, because this is what I have found. So it would have to, my recommendation, if we go in this direction, would be it phases out over time. Because when I'm talking to these people and they are unaware of the service and they start asking me questions about it, obviously I'm transparent about it. So what they're doing is they're calling American Security and seeing if their current system or their non-working system is compatible with American Security. And they may be paying $1,000 or $1,500 an upgrade that's on their end. And then all of a sudden, if you do away with the service immediately, they may not have went with American Security anyways. So, this is, I always preface my conversation with them by saying, if you choose to go with American Security, just, there's been no discussion at this point about doing away with the service, but keep that in mind, that could change at some point in time. So, they're putting, $1,500 in an alarm system, then all of a sudden it disappears. They're not going to be real happy about it.
Yeah.
Greg, I would think that anybody that is being monitored by American Security and sets their alarm, American Security knows when that alarm is active. Is that not true? Or they only know if so I think we could get a more accurate count from them if they're going to be transparent and let us know how many people are really using the service.
Well, the challenge becomes, Larry, and I do not disagree with you. There's not much incentive on American Security's end to do much, quite honestly, because they just send us the bill. So they really don't do any work. There'd be no incentive for them to do the work.
But is there a way that we can request from them how many people are actively setting their alarm?
Well, yeah, excuse me, Larry, just to follow on that, can't we have the homes that they're billing us for? And then we can do some spot checks. I mean, it seems
That's what they're doing.
Do we have a list?
They do give addresses.
That's what they're doing.
We have a list of addresses.
Getting billed.
So we can check if those people are using it.
Good idea.
Yes, we have a list we receive. We have all the homes on the list. And, like, once again, it's just obviously it's tedious going through the list, playing phone tag, it's just time consuming, and that's it. But keep in mind, these aren't just for new residents either. I mean, so what we have found also is, like I said earlier, resident maybe up on Old Mill Road. Yes, I still have the service. I still want the service, but I don't set my alarm all the time. I don't like setting it at night when I'm sleeping. I don't want it going off and vice versa. So once again, they're going to go ahead and still want the service because we're paying for the service.
So I think there are two issues I think that we'll have to consider in our follow-up is, one, do we continue to offer it or do it as a grandfathered approach as Karen suggested? And the other thing is figuring out who's using it and trying to reduce the cost on the people that aren't using it. The last area I'd like to get to is house checks. House checks, for those of you that don't use them, is used by residents when they go away on a vacation and they call up or by email notify the police that they'll be gone, and then their house is checked upon, doors are checked. I think they look in the windows, they make sure there's no problems going on, and that's at no cost to the resident.
Is that Kate?
Apparently, this is also done in Hunting Valley at no cost, and I believe Janet Hills also does not charge for that. Is that correct? So one of our villagers questioned whether or not this should be done at a cost basis. Should we continue to do it? And I open that up for discussion.
Well, I guess I can kick this off because, this falls primarily on the police department. I certainly would not be in favor of this at all. It's a terrible idea, quite honestly, just because it's really our core service that we offer down here. And, the officers are on patrol, they're hitting the side streets. To say, we're not going to go ahead and check on somebody's property because they're not paying for the service, in my mind, they already are, would be bad. And, not only the residential homes, but, the schools, we have a lot of schools down here. I mean, just use Gilmore Academy as just an example. You know, there's so much property up there. You know, we're always doing things up there. There's always things going on, so we control that heavily. Sit here and say that, you know, we're not going to drive through there because they're not paying, you know, doesn't feel right to me. So I would be 100% opposed to this.
I want to just jump in to support Chief here too. I think that we are a residential community, and so my question is, what does a residential police force do in a residential community? They check residences, and it is both a form of crime prevention because it's presence, and it's also crime detection. And I think their response, it's not just. It's anybody in the village can say, "Hey, I'm on vacation. Please be aware." And so I really think this is a kind of a fundamental part of policing in Gates Mills. Yeah.
And I also think if the word got out that we weren't checking on residences during vacation times, would be an incentive for more break-ins. In the village, if the word got out that we weren't patrolling our streets anymore.
I agree 100%. I am dead set against changing that. Okay. I'm dead set against changing that. This is how our residents in some instances get to know our policemen. And it really is, it's good for the morale. It's good for the resident. What is going on?
You know, and then
there's a road rally going through the village right now.
And then just the last point is, that it just wouldn't work. I mean, so think about it. A resident calls in, going out of town, keeping an eye on my house. Does it become, oh, well, how often do you want to check your house? Because we go ahead and bill you X amount of dollars each time you do it. So
it's just the wrong.
Who's going to go after it? They don't.
It doesn't represent us well. This is the wrong attitude to take for our police force. It's just, I think it's a non-starter with me at all.
I agree.
I think we're in agreement.
Agreed.
I agree.
Yeah, agreed.
I love the service because my house is so hard to find. I like the fact that when I go away, the police department knows where I live. So when I need them, they'll know where to find me.
It's a trust, and it makes people feel comfortable and supportive of our village as a whole.
Okay, so we'll have a short follow-up meeting, and I'll send out a couple times for that based on what we created today. In the last minute or two or three or four before we have to end this, did anyone think of any other opportunities that we haven't covered that you would like to see covered in the next meeting? If you think of any, please email them to me, and we'll definitely consider them. The list was pretty complete that we started with, and I think it's been a great meeting. A lot of the areas have been identified, and some good follow-up will be necessary. Again, I appreciate everyone being here and doing this.
Larry, thank you very much. Great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Larry. Everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a nice weekend.
Hey, Larry,
Yes.
before you sign off, we had 6 people that were viewing the live stream. We didn't receive any questions from those folks.
Okay.
I did post a thing that if they had comments or questions, that they should email them to you as the committee chair at your Gmail address.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you for coming in on Saturday morning. Tell Barb I'm sorry I got you out of the house so early.
Oh, that.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's been a really tough time with all these meetings and auditing and everything. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate your help for answering all my questions. So thank you. And Scott, to you for being a good neighbor.
Thanks.
You're for being a good
mutual.
Thanks, Jane.
All right, bye, guys.
Thanks, Shay.
All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Would you find out where she